I'm excited because hopefully, I think maybe it's the 14th that Cobra Kai season 2 comes out.
Oh, yeah. The old Cobra Kai. I've not seen season 1. I've heard very good things, so.
I enjoyed it a lot. It's definitely not true crime. Or maybe it is, because they're teaching like teenagers to fight. Maybe there's some crime element there.
Defend themselves.
Well, it depends on what team you're on.
Right. This week, we have an unfortunate anniversary. It is
It's our 50th show.
Well, now we're remembering the 5 students that were killed in an arson fire near the Ohio State University campus. This took place on April 13th, 2003. And it was big news here at the time because it was a unfortunate, tragic event that was, of course, ruled an arson just within days of the blaze. And this was a fire that took place at, well, I mean, you could argue here or there whether it was campus or not campus. Technically, the papers say off-campus housing, which, I mean, you could toss a football from the campus to where this house was located. And this was a house that they were hosting a birthday party for that evening. And it was a multi-kegger that spilled out into the yard. This was a warm night back in 2003.
What street was it on?
This was the house, was located at 64 East 17th Avenue. Okay. And it was technically rented to 12 college students at the time.
Isn't that nuts? It's a house is rented to 12 students.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Yeah, this is one of those cases when I looked into it, it really helps to... They did post like a diagram of the actual home in the newspapers back then, and that really helped to kind of visualize the unfortunate events that took place that night. They estimate that there was like approximately 80 people that were in and out through the course of that evening. This was a birthday party, 21st birthday party for one of the house's residents. And what took place, Captain, was around 4 a.m, there was an anonymous 911 call that came in. The caller was a woman. We still don't know to this day who it was. But she said that she was passing by the house when she saw half of the house lit up in flames. The firefighters rushed to the house and they found what they later categorized as a fast-moving, intense blaze amounting to a 3-alarm fire.
Right.
Which was one of the larger ones in recent memory. Apparently, this fire spread very quickly throughout the house. Some of the kids were still awake when the 6 smoke detectors, I want to make sure we point out here, their smoke detectors were working in the house. So some of the kids were awake and some were sleeping when the smoke detectors went off. Several of them were able to escape. 3 people, John Chambers, Lindsay Schoenberg, and Tom Siegel, were in the basement, and they were able to get out on their own. But as the fire department is arriving, they figure out they're going to have to start pulling some of these people out. And this is a difficult situation, too, because as we said, this house is big enough for 12 students to live there. So you're showing up to this campus house.
Yeah.
You don't know how many people were in there. They don't know that there was a party that night.
Well, again, these houses are strange, so even to have 12 people living there, or is there 15 or is there 5? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's really hard to tell from the outside of the building. But back to the person that called, there's no suspicion that she was involved. This is just somebody walking by.
Well, that's interesting that you point that out because I think there should be some suspicion. I don't know that if police were able to identify this woman.
Right.
As far as the news reports go, there's no mention of her name at any time. So when I say an anonymous caller, it may just be anonymous to us because there were some individuals that say that they saw a person of interest maybe in the area at that time. Mm-hmm. And we'll get into that here in a minute. But in the end, we have this multi-floor, multi-level house where there's technically bedrooms on the basement level, ground level, and on the second floor. And from my understanding, Captain, it was a lot of the people that were on the second floor that did not make it out
Right.
of that house, unfortunately. And the firefighters, the first responders that showed up and responded to the blaze, they said that on the second floor, so there was a fire escape that you could access from the second floor, and that's how the firefighters went into the second floor. But by the time they got there, now mind you, I think it was like the response time was like 3 minutes, 4 minutes. It was not long at all. The problem, though, is, like the caller said, when she calls in, she's calling in a house that is halfway on fire.
Right.
So we got half the house already burn up. And by the time the firefighters get to this house, they get to the second floor, they're crawling on their hands and knees trying to navigate through and around flames, and there's smoke up above them. It's just a smoke-filled second floor. The ceiling of the second floor is burning bright red, according to these firefighters.
Well, and some people never even wake up, and if there was a party or any of these individuals drunk and just didn't hear the alarms and didn't wake up, and then they normally die from inhaling all the smoke.
Right, and that's exactly how that was the cause of death for all 5 of the individuals. It was smoke inhalation or carbon monoxide poisoning. Yeah. And the thing, though, they were able to determine through toxicology that all 5 of the victims, they were drinking that night, but none of them, they never considered those levels of intoxication to be that high that they wouldn't have woke up during this situation. My guess is we have some living, some of the people that were technically victims because they were in the home, but they made it out.
Right.
Be it dragged out by firefighters or if they got out on their own. There was at least one of these victims that I think she described the house as, she's like, I was in a room that I very likely could have died in very shortly afterwards. But she's like, I woke up and the room just felt hot to me. Like not hot to the point where she thought there was a fire or anything.
Right.
So I think with the layout of the house, that kind of adds to the trouble here with this. But
well, and also if I lived on campus. Technically, I lived there. I wasn't a resident there, but I basically stayed up there for at least 2 years of my life. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these houses would have bedrooms that they blocked off into 2 rooms instead of 1. They'd take an attic and turn that into a bedroom. So a lot of those types of rooms or houses, it was, you go to the bathroom upstairs and you get lost.
Yeah.
So is it possible that some of these victims just weren't able to find their way out? And also there's more confusion because there's smoke and there's fire. But I mean, you have two females that are 19, one that's 20, and then 2 males that are 21. I remember like what it felt like, or imagine I can remember what it feels like to be 21. But when you look at these victims, it's very sad because when you see their picture, 21 looks very young now. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's just me getting really old, but they look like babies.
Well, and as you said, the layout of the house could be confusing, especially in a panic situation. And 3 of the victims did not live there. Christine Wilson, Andrea Dennis, and Aaron DeMarco were not residents of that home. They were actually students at OU, at Ohio University, that drove up just to attend the party. Yeah. And so 2 of the victims, I believe, were residents. I know Alan Schlesman, was one of the victims. He was not only somebody that lived there, but it was his birthday party. That was the purpose of the celebration that day.
Yeah.
And his good friend Kyle Rowland did live in the house as well. So this, as said, was determined to be a arson.
And why is that? Because it varies in each case, but
Well, so the thing here is that's one part that I think is kind of difficult about this case is regarding the bit of it being arson. It was ruled an arson, but one thing I couldn't find is there's different information put out there from different sources. Some of them say that an accelerant was used, and others do not say that.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I say that that it's tricky to state that it's arson is years later, some of the deciding factors that would determine an arson have become almost like junk science, where I don't think it's a definitive answer every single time. The problem with this case is, was there an accelerant used? If there was, then it has to be an arson, right?
Right.
But the belief is, or at least what they released to the papers, they were able to determine that the fire started on the house's front porch. Now, I know that a lot of those houses up there have couches on the front porch.
Yeah.
And
well,
so
they used to. Mm-hmm. Not so much anymore.
Yeah.
But this is 2003. This is probably, I was up there probably 2000, 2001, kind of started dwindling, hanging out down there about 2002. So this was, but around that time, it was like notorious to have a couch on your front porch.
Mm-hmm. The weird thing, too, when looking back at this, there was a surprising number of arsons in the area around that time period as well. Now,
well, there was a lot of arsons from 2000, 2001, 2002. There was a lot of little mini riots after football games,
mm-hmm.
and they were lighting. It became a very common thing to light a dumpster on fire.
Right.
And I think a lot of times when you have people moving out, like let's say winter break or whatever, there's some people that are actually dropping out of school. So they throw away a crummy mattress or whatever. And sometimes I wondered, is somebody starting a fire, or is it a situation where you have some furniture that's in the dumpster, you have maybe some leftover alcohol, and somebody's flicking a cigarette or something, and it's eventually causing a fire?
Well, yeah. I mean, not arson in the sense of somebody trying to cause bodily harm or burn someone's property down.
Right.
A lot of this is just straight up can be chalked up to goofing around.
Yeah.
Drunk college kids
and
setting things on fire.
Do you know if there was a actual couch on their front porch?
I believe there was. And that is believed to be the start of the fire, of where it all came from.
And 17th, that's around that's 17 East 17th. So this is kind of around the area that they also have some sororities, fraternities. That's not too far off. The reason why I bring this up is I lived on Indiana Avenue, or stayed on Indiana Avenue, and we ended up putting up some Christmas lights. I think they were purple. You went up there several times to party with us,
mm-hmm.
and we ended up putting up purple lights, like on the porch. And the reason why I bring up the story is 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, something like that. I just hear some banging and some noises going on front porch. But now I'd probably look through the peephole or look through the window, but it was so common that somebody could just be messing with your property that you just open the door. So I opened up the door, and it was this guys from the rugby team that lived, 7 houses down from us. And they were taking our lights and smashing them on the front porch.
Oh, nice.
And then
nice.
I was like, what are you doing? And the guy's like, we're smashing your lights. What are you going to do about it?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, nothing. I don't like the purple lights. Enjoy. Just clean up the mess when you're done.
Right.
And then I went back to bed, and then, of course, in the morning, I woke up, and they didn't clean up the mess. They smashed all the lights. Point being is this is at 4 o'clock in the morning. Bars are closing about 2. People are walking home. People are dropping people off. You have a lot of drunk individuals. Is this a situation where somebody's just trying to be a jerk and it's not purposeful, as far as you're not trying to hurt somebody, but, oh, let's light this off on somebody's porch, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just think in this situation, especially with it being on campus, it just is likely like that would happen.
Well, that means an interesting thing for the investigation, in my opinion, because now you have a situation where you have 5 deaths, 5 homicides to deal with. And you have a situation where you have a party that was going on at that residence that night, about 80 or so people in and out through the course of the evening. So from an investigator standpoint, you have a lot of people to interview, a lot of people to figure out, did anyone in this group have a grudge against these anybody that lived there?
Surprising to me that there's nobody, on the front porch smoking a cigarette or something at 4 a.m. because parties didn't quit, like we didn't shut up shop at 2 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
So it's surprising to me that there wasn't somebody left over from the party, from the original 80 some people that were at the party, that was still up and drinking a beer on the front porch.
Yeah, we have no one to say that they saw the fire get started or that they witnessed the fire start. It's the only accounts that we have coming from outside of the house would be the anonymous caller who notified 911. And then later there are a couple people that say that they saw an individual in the area that was wearing like a Snoop Dogg style jacket.
A Snoop Dogg style jacket. Okay.
Yeah, it was described as a denim jacket with a Snoop Dogg logo on it.
Yeah, because that's always really gangster when you wear a jacket with some other dude's name on it. That makes never understood that.
Well, I mean, Snoop Dogg obviously sold these, and people obviously bought them. At least this guy. But
I just think it's hilarious. I'm tough, man. I got Snoop Dogg's name on my jacket.
So what they do is this Snoop Dogg jacket seems to be like their main lead when it comes to trying to figure out who could have possibly set this fire.
But again, what's his motive? I mean, is he just lights a fire to light a fire?
Well, that's the big question here. That's the $64,000 question. What was the motive for this whole tragic event?
Yeah.
And that's why I said it's interesting from an investigator standpoint. You have 80 partygoers there that night. Was it somebody that attended the party that set the fire? Was it somebody that lived across the street? Was it somebody driving in from out of town? It could have been any number of people. We still don't know. This is a cold case today, and the reason why we're talking about it here today is that this pops up in our local news every time this year because we're what? Less than a week away from the anniversary. So every year they call for information for people to come out and if they saw anything or if they know anything, because the thing is with something like this, you have to wonder a couple things. If somebody set this fire for revenge purposes, and maybe their intent wasn't to kill anybody, maybe it was just as simply to do some property damage.
Right. Or it was a prank or whatever.
Or it was a prank. Or it was a total accident. I think that the thought is in this type of situation that this is something that somebody would have spoke about at some point. I mean, we're talking 16 years later. And I really feel like, and I think investigators feel like the only way that they're going to ever solve this thing is if they get someone to come forward and someone to say, hey, I know something that you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Here's this individual that told me that they started this fire for any number of reasons, be it an accident or revenge or a prank or any number of reasons. I know this person that is struggling to live with what they've done and told me this in confidence, and now I'm passing it along to law enforcement.
That's what makes me feel like this is more of an accident, and that the person that caused the accident probably doesn't even know that they caused it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason being is that this is a long time to live with something that would be haunting you like that. And so I think if that's the case, the person would never come forward because they don't even know that they're responsible for, it could be so many things, right? I mean, can you go over the evidence a little bit again, just as far as why they think it's an arson and not just an accident?
Well, I don't have any specific evidence to point to that. All I have is the statements that were given. We have Fire Captain Rick Saltzman, who says, "We know it was an arson. This was not an accidental fire." So basically, what these articles are saying, what these news articles and news reports are saying, is that according to the fire investigators who combed through the house thoroughly, they were able to determine, according to their statement, they were able to rule out any accidental causes for fire. They would have been checking things like electrical lines leading to and from the house, gas lines,
right,
things of that nature. So according to their statements, they were able to rule out any cause by accident that this house would have burnt down. Now, so I guess by process of elimination, maybe that's what they're left with is arson. The problem, though, for us on the outside looking in on this thing is they may know more than that.
Right.
They may know exactly what caused this fire, and because they don't have a whole lot to go off of, that might be the thing that they have to hold on to arrest the appropriate person.
Well, like I said, it makes it a lot more difficult because also there's a lot of houses that look similar up there. Is this a situation where somebody was trying to cause harm to somebody, but they got the wrong house, they got the wrong street? Again, did they mean for it to be a prank?
Mm-hmm.
Did the person that did this even know the individuals? And I think that's what makes it way more difficult. But it's one of those cases where it's hard to even speculate because you don't even know what the firefighters know.
Right. And again, it's one of those things where I wish that they would come out and definitively say if they know that there was an accelerant used. I want to point out a couple of things, though, of interest here. So I know when they were looking through the home and looking at the home, because it took them a few days to come to the conclusion of arson. I believe it was 3 days, maybe 4 days after that they announced that it was, in their opinion, an arson and not an accidental fire. But they were looking at typical things that you would expect to see at a campus house. Charcoal grill, kerosene tiki torches,
right.
Anything. You mentioned lights and things like that. So you could have decorations, anything up there like that. And then on top of that, charcoal grill. I mean, you could also have a situation where somebody, for whatever reason, decided they wanted to light this fire and they used stuff that they found at the home or on the front porch itself as the accelerant. Now, I couldn't find any local newspaper articles that were saying 100% that an accelerant was used and what that accelerant was. However, this was featured on America's Most Wanted. I think it was a few months, maybe 6 months after the fire. And they did say on America's Most Wanted that an accelerant was used. Now, I don't know if that was some kind of creative license that they took there and decided to include that and it's truthful, or if they just added that to the story.
Did you ever go to any of our Christmas parties?
I don't think so.
So what we'd do is what we realized was since we were in college, but we're all in college where our families were from, right?
Mm-hmm.
So some of our friends would go back home, but what we realized was normally Christmas Eve you'd have some stuff with your family, and then Christmas Day you would normally go eat with your family, hang out with your family, whatever. But Christmas night got nothing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, people were done by 4 or 5 o'clock. So we decided to start having a Christmas party, and it was a Christmas barbecue. But I'm sure you went to one of the parties where we hung out in the back and not the front.
Yeah.
But we always had a fire pit going. So a lot of these campus houses, you got a grill and you got some sort of fire pit. So I just wonder, was this stuff on their front porch? But I don't know. I wish we had more information from the firefighters, because it kind of gives you nowhere to go other than there was a suspicious guy wearing a Snoop Dogg jacket.
Well, so the thing is that there are two leads where, one, there was some kind of disagreement at the party that night. Okay, so this would have been around like 3 a.m. There was like a shouting match between two of the men, and this included one member that lived at the house, and the other man was a guest. And I guess somebody was messing with the refrigerator on a dare. I don't know if they were trying to lift it up or move it or something like that, but somebody that lived there is like, hey, man, you leave the refrigerator alone. And there were some people, some party goers that pointed to police and said, hey, this could be what you're looking for, that maybe there was some kind of fight and somebody later returned to the house and set the couch on fire. Maybe their intent was to burn down the house. Maybe their intent was just to light something on fire on the front porch.
Right.
As a, you know. But what police would ultimately say about that situation is that while it was an interesting lead for them, after talking to everybody that witnessed this altercation, they were like, this was not really a fight. This was, you know, a couple guys like shouting at each other. To call this a fight is an injustice to fights everywhere. You know?
I understand that, but then it becomes difficult because let's say this guy's drinking and he's trying to lift up the refrigerator and they're like, hey, put it down. And he's like, you know me, I'm a little crazy, you know? And then like people kind of talk a little shit, and then you go, yeah, I'm going to light their couch on fire just to show them as a joke. And I think that's a very good possibility that somebody did it not to harm, not to kill anybody, but to basically go, haha, I got you guys. And all the evidence would, you know, show that somebody did it on purpose. But then when you're being questioned, if you're at the party, you're being questioned with the idea that we have 5 people dead.
Right.
You see what I mean? So it changes the scenario real quick. And could somebody that didn't mean anything by it other than to like startle them or prank them and have them come running out and, you know, dump water on the couch or whatever? Could somebody live with this and not say anything? I think it's possible.
Well, yeah, I mean, anything's, I mean, of course that's possible. That's your deepest, darkest secret if you're that person.
Right.
But that's all police have to go off of now, is saying that they believe that their only chance of solving this is likely someone coming forward and saying, I know something you don't know.
But this doesn't make any sense either.
Somebody told me this.
This doesn't make any sense either. There's let's say it's not a fight, right? It's just kind of a, don't do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't do that anymore. At 3 o'clock in the morning, and then the fire happens at 4.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, there's people up. And who was up? Still at the house. Who was still partying?
Mm-hmm. There
had to be somebody. And again, that could be information that the firefighters know and we don't. So I don't know. It's tough too. And sometimes with these cases, it's really frustrating to me because you go, well, you can, you know, every anniversary you can say, hey, we want some information. Can you guys give us some information? Well, you're probably not going to get it because there is no new information that you're giving. And if you released a couple things, well, we know A, B, C, and D. That might spark conversation with somebody that was at the party. These people have thought about this probably every day of their life. Even the ones you know, even people that were just at the party and weren't there when the fire happened, but maybe, you know, left at midnight. I probably think about this often. So I think that gets difficult because you have to start releasing information, I think, if you want to have any chances of getting any new information back. It's not just going to be like, well, let's put it in the papers every year and hope somebody decides to change their mind. It's heat sometimes, you know, and no pun intended, but it's like sometimes you have to put the heat on individuals by releasing information. You start releasing that information, people get nervous. And when people get nervous, they normally start talking.
Well, I mean, they did arrest somebody. They arrested a 20-year-old man. His name was Robert Lucky Patterson. And they arrested him. And what's a little unclear is one of the big tips that they got regarding this case was from I believe it might have been from a campus police officer, you know, the old campus patrol.
Right.
And I don't think that, well, what I should say is until this goes to trial, we will never know for certain. But we don't know if the tips that were coming in named the individual specifically, or if it was just a description of the individual. But what we do know that was made public was that the tips were about a white man, about 5'11", 200 pounds, with shaggy blonde hair and a dark jacket. And then again, some of the newspaper articles referenced that Snoop Dogg jean jacket with the letters SDC printed on it. Now, what they did was they were going around and they were showing people pictures of either a similar jacket or believed to be the same jacket, as well as their description they have of this man, this person of interest. And eventually they catch up with this Robert Lucky Patterson, who's 20 years old. He was local to the area but did not attend OSU. He had worked at one of the pizza places nearby for a long time. Now, his situation was difficult because he was like a known petty criminal. Okay, he's got very small charges against him leading up to this. And when they talk to him, we have a weird situation because this guy, they really believe that this could be their dude. This dude's quite cooperative, in my opinion, from what I could see. One, he didn't, run and hide from them. He spoke with police multiple times. I believe he passed a lie detector test, a polygraph test. But what happens is he admits to being in the general area that night and around about the time they believed that the fire started. And they were like, well, what were you doing in the area? He's like, I was trying to steal car stereos in the parking lot behind East 17th Avenue. Mm-hmm. When, what stopped you? Well, I got into an altercation with somebody. Now, I don't know the details of that, because what would be interesting to know is, could that altercation have been one, either somebody that lived at the home that was eventually burnt down, where we have the 5 homicides, or was it from a different house, or was it just a passerby, somebody that sees somebody doing something wrong and says, hey, buddy, what the hell are you doing? Right. Tries to chase the dude off. So their thought is that whatever happened between this Robert Patterson, whatever attempt to scare him off from trying to steal car stereos from behind the East 17th Avenue, that he got pissed off and decided to set this fire. Now, he does admit a couple of things that are tricky. One, he admits that he has blackout periods and he has a drug and alcohol problem, and that he was using drugs and alcohol that night. He also states that he was carrying matches with him that night. Now, this could be something as simple as, you got to kind of put yourself in this interrogation room when you hear these things, these statements given by what we are told are suspects. So we're like, oh shit, this guy was in the area around that same time. He was carrying matches. Looks pretty good to me. But in the interrogation room, it's not so much that, man. It's do you smoke? Yes. Okay, well, were you carrying a lighter with you that night? I don't know. Do you always carry a lighter? Sometimes I carry matches. Were you carrying matches with you that night? Probably. Okay, well, we have this fire. Okay, but I smoke. You know, I light a cigarette from time to time. You know, so it's one of those things where they have this guy and they go to bring charges against him. They arrest him, and there's some famous pictures of him locally anywhere where they have the protective vest on him while they're leading him in and out of the police department, because a lot of people thought somebody might try to take a shot at this guy. And they hold him for a number of days, but there's a rule that once you're arrested, they have to be able to bring formal charges against you at some point. You can't just hold somebody forever and sit around while you twiddle your thumbs and try to come up with charges against this person.
Yeah.
So as the deadline approached for that, the prosecutor, the Central Ohio prosecutor, he released this Patterson guy. And the thing was he didn't have enough evidence to bring these formal charges against him. So we talk about so many times on this show, and we see it so many times in the media and on TV and in the newspapers, where we as citizens question what information they had. You know, we just got done talking about Adnan Syed for 3 or 4 weeks.
Right.
Here's a case where we have a prosecutor that says, pump the brakes a little bit. We might not have a case here. And of course, the prosecutor has to keep in mind that he's got double jeopardy to worry about at all times. But we have somebody that I believe is doing a good job and says, pump the brakes here. We can't charge this individual with this. We don't have enough evidence. We don't have a confession from the guy.
Right.
We don't have a bunch of evidence tying him to. And you know what? Public opinion, especially at the time, it didn't take long to arrest this dude. But public opinion at the time, they were looking for somebody to hang. You know, 5 college students, 5 young adults killed all in one foul swoop.
Yeah.
They were looking for somebody to hang, and that's why they were putting that vest on Patterson. They thought somebody was going to take a shot at this guy. That's how bad they wanted somebody to face justice for this horrible incident. And I say incident because I'm kind of left years later wondering if this could have just been a straight up accident of some sort. That, like you said, somebody flicks a cigarette the wrong way, and you got lighter fluid, charcoal grill, tiki torches.
Or take Patterson for example, and this is completely hypothetical. He is in the area. He's trying to break into cars, whatever he's doing. Right? Somebody goes, "Hey, get out of here." It's one of the friends at the party.
Mm-hmm.
Patterson comes around the block, notices that, starts walking around, notices, hey, there's nobody at that party anymore. Just light the sofa on fire,
mm-hmm.
or a chair on fire, or whatever, just to kind of be a nuisance. Then people end up dead. Again, it's one of those things where it's like, what evidence? They're not going to ever have the nail to the final nail in the coffin unless somebody confesses, right? We can guess that anyways.
Well, yeah, no, I agree with that 100%, but I also stick by what police have continued to say since 2003. And I would say that this case probably went cold about a year or so after. That's when it seemed to die down that they were going to be able to bring charges against Patterson. But I do stick by the thing that they remind the public about every year around this time of the anniversary is that, look, so we believe not just the person that started this fire, we believe that somebody else, somebody that knows the person that started this fire, knows something, has been told something or saw something at some point. We are asking you to come forward because we don't believe that the person that set this fire is going to come forward.
Right. Which I understand. So maybe there is somebody then you got to, hopefully, and I agree with them. That's the person that's going to come forward. The person that actually did it, whether it's an accident or not, they know if I open up my big mouth, I might be going to jail for life.
Mm-hmm.
And so gives you a lot of motivation not to talk.
Yeah, so as we talk about this, Captain, I'm scrolling through different articles because, as I said, every year around this time, they start releasing articles reminding us about this tragedy and reminding us that they're still looking for the perpetrator of the fire that led to these 5 homicides. And so some of the information here says unknown lie detector test results regarding Patterson. So I want to be clear about that. I think I said earlier that I believed he might have passed one, but it says unknown lie detector test results. And then also we have a statement. This is 2004. So this is April 2004, 1 year after the fire, where Ron O'Brien was the prosecutor at the time that was trying to put this case together. And he says a year after the fire that police are still investigating Robert Patterson, among others, is his statement. So I think we have a situation here where the police really felt like they had their guy, and I think maybe Ron O'Brien, the prosecutor, is going, not so certain. It could still be somebody else.